Everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be my Gameweek 14 transfer plans. Tottenham versus Fulham is still a match that's going on. Fortunately for me, I don't own Van de Ven, and I think things are unfortunately not going in his favor. Now that I've said this, I'm sure obviously over the course of the game, something will happen, and I've already put it in stone, but let's not react to that. We're in a very good position right now. The free hit has been successful in the sense that I brought in two players with a brace. Was I sad that I brought in Sade, who somehow played much less minutes of football than Dango? Absolutely. And I think maybe in hindsight, there was absolutely a consideration there of, was Dango, I guess, prepared, right, to let's say get rested versus Arsenal and therefore play much more minutes versus Burnley? Should I have taken that into account? Absolutely. Dango obviously has better underlying stats in terms of XGI, but obviously just if I thought on a minutes principle, Sade tends to play most games. He could probably hold out even if there's a midweek fixture to come. At this point with Sade, I guess, not having the best of games and Dango having a brilliant game, even if Brentford to move towards a back three, like maybe there's a case for Dango to play and start the match versus Arsenal just on form. But that's kind of the swings in FPL. It wasn't the most brutal of swings, fortunately. We deal with swings like this every single week, and I'll shut up. Collins, O'Reilly, I think it's nice to pick Collins. I think what's funny about Collins is I think from a sort of modeling point of view, like I could see even like on hub models or even other models, like people were sort of suggesting that Collins just had much better expected points. But then if you look at the short-term sample size of Vandenberg, that he might have been more interesting, right, on XG per 90. But I think even speaking to one of my Brentford friends and fans, like 11.5, he was basically saying, Collins is still the set piece threat of the team. Just when you watch him, he's a Brentford fan, right? So trust him there. And I went for Collins. He had 0.5 XG, just flat out. Two big chances missed. From those chances, both I think were 0.25 XG, which is huge for a set piece, right? Actually, most set pieces that you think about when players score tend to actually be lower than that. And then he just smoked Vandenberg in DEFCONs, which I think is also just going back to the point on DEFCONs. Collins has had much better career DEFCON. He's also had better DEFCON this season. If you were not to sort of be very, I think, unfair with sample sizes, the reality is Collins, his DEFCON per 90 naturally was higher. So for me, I even had discussions about Vandenberg. Not that it matters too much, right? At the end of the day, you're still seeking the double clean sheet, or at least a clean sheet as the main source of points, but it's just nice to have the 2 points. That's all I'm saying. With O'Reilly, he kind of matched everyone else. Like Nunez got the assist, Guardiola obviously did better, but O'Reilly created that chance. O'Reilly also had a bit of a chance where he could have scored the goal where Doku crossed the ball from like an in-swing cross in open play. And he's just so much more exciting in open play. I have to say that. Even though Nunez is active, he does sort of do some cutbacks occasionally and is a part of the coherent offense. I just think O'Reilly's underlying stats is something that I would have much more faith in. So, for example, if I'm let's say thinking about my FPL team going forward, it's like O'Reilly actually is probably someone that I would even think about that I'd keep in my team or look to as a future transfer when City's fixtures kind of ease up. The tricky thing for me, I guess, because of the logic of the free hit is, I went for City. Fulham away to me is a poor game. Sunderland at home is a good game. Crystal Palace away is a poor game. So I think the next time I'm going to revisit City defenders is probably Gameweek 17. But maybe Foden could still be interesting. And Foden obviously had a brilliant performance. And, I'm not the type of person who'd overreact to this Foden performance too much, because this isn't too different from Foden in other games of the season where, he's had maybe a few shots, nothing too exceptional. This wasn't like some sort of game where Foden had, 5 or 6 or 7 shots. This was a pretty standard game from a Foden perspective, but he did, manage to actually score those shots. And like, if I even look at the XG of this match, obviously it's quite high. It's one of his better games so far, but it's not like he put in blisteringly good numbers, right? He had, for example, similar levels of XG versus Newcastle and didn't score. And I think we just need to be comfortable with saying that there are players like Foden who are really good finishers that can do this on any sort of day, and you really can't feel hard done about it. I think there are managers this season, for very good reasons, who owned Foden for multiple weeks with good minutes and didn't get any points from him, and maybe sold him recently, or maybe don't like the fact that other people in the free hit got him. But that's going to happen. Swings like that are very brutal, but it just shows you once again when I talked about the logic of the free hit, and I don't know what Liverpool are going to do, but the idea of going for players like Foden, like Salah and Gakpo is pretty much just saying I do have faith on some level, right? That West Ham is still a very weak defense, and that Liverpool are still a decent offense despite the defense slipping mostly, right? When you compare it to both sort of strands. And then even with someone like Foden, like he's still cracking some shots. There was a bit more of a recent uptake in shots, and the minutes are still perfect compared to any other City players. Although I will also recognize that Doku played 90 minutes, probably a little bit game state related because they just, needed to win. And I think Pep has more faith in players like Doku and Foden to actually be able to secure the win for City. And there you kind of have it. So interesting game week so far. I think I can still get hurt massively by Arsenal defenders, Crystal Palace defenders, Crystal Palace attackers. So I'm not going to pretend like this is a massive win for the free hit. I still need Aston Villa to absolutely cook. I need Liverpool to do something for once in, what is a almost extended run of poor performances now. So I don't think the free hit's won. I think, in a sense, unfortunately, I think what is clear, I guess, is triple captaincy has unfortunately flopped. But I have to look at this and just say that this was another good game on paper for the triple captaincy. And the next game is West Ham at home, which I think is a better game still, just based on underlying stats. And I think it's interesting to note, of course, Leeds and Sunderland, very impressive still on a weekend like this. Sunderland actually getting a win versus Bournemouth, although, showing some cracks, I guess, in terms of the defense, but still finding really interesting ways to score and sort of overperform their XG. And then City, I think they gave a lot of chances to Leeds. So, is that a great sign for what was coming to this weekend, the second best defense in the Prem? No, I think once again it shows a massive separation from what Arsenal are versus the rest of the field, and it makes me more tempted to buy some more Arsenal defenders, if I'm being honest with you, without knowing what's going to happen versus Chelsea, because I think, regardless of what happens versus Chelsea, Arsenal don't often face that level of team away from home or just in general. So yeah, just the thought there. Good game week so far, and we'll see how it goes. But 35,000 in the world, I think, with Van de Ven to play and probably get another point, hopefully, and that being it, we should hopefully keep a top 40k ranking and be able to enjoy, as I said, the rest of the game week. So let's just talk about my team rolling, right? So if I click on the pick team button, this is my team as it stands. Now, Senesi's suspended because he actually got 5 yellow cards. So that means that I'm forced to play basically what I would think is something like this, right? If Anderson is to play, well, I probably would have Dewsbury Hall personally over Anderson. I'm not really going to back against City. So yeah, like this is the situation with my team. I don't play Senesi. So it's Dewsbury Hall first, Senesi probably. Maybe I'd play Krupi Jr. over him, but it's unlikely that Krupi Jr. starts, because we're starting to see now that Krupi Jr. isn't starting games, even though, there's still injuries in the squad that help his minutes on paper, despite Evan Nilsson being back. Semenyo is actually back fully fit. I think he actually had a really good game, just looking at the underlying stats from the Sunderland game, shots, creation as well. Dewsbury Hall has just been on form. Will I ever start this man? Maybe this is the week, right? If I don't make a transfer, but will I make a transfer? Probably, because that's what I like to do. But yeah, this is one of those game weeks where I think there's a consideration for, do I transfer someone like Senesi out, or do I just chill for once, right? Because there's an opportunity to make 3 free transfers in game week 15 for me, because I have 2 free transfers now, and play around that. Because what I would say is that my midfield's extremely strong outside of Dewsbury Hall, but Dewsbury Hall has proven to be very, very good. Bournemouth's defense generally, I think, is still, it's fair to say that they're still slipping as a team. So why not kind of bank into Dewsbury Hall and his sort of huge uptick in form, and honestly, like, backed by really good underlying stats. Like today he actually had a great chance and he converted it, versus he scored a screamer with his weak foot versus Man United, with 10 men. Haaland, Mateta, I feel like Mateta with 60 minutes on a week like this, there's more than enough justification to keep him. I don't really care what the minutes are versus United. Maybe it's the case that Nketiah could start versus Burnley, and that could obviously make me look stupid, but still, I think I'll take 30-40 minutes versus Burnley, because that's the worst defense in the league, and I'll still stand by that, and I'll stand by the reasoning for going against Burnley on any sort of week. So yeah, I feel Semenyo, Saka, Bruno, and Mbeumo, with exception to, let's say, Liverpool attackers themselves, like, I don't think you can really go worse in terms of the midfield. So I think I have a really strong midfield. Dewsbury Hall, I probably just need to have faith in my team for 1 week. But because what I struggle to see in terms of improving my team is, like, okay, there are moves like maybe something that gets me Semenyo to Foden. That could be interesting, but it's still Fulham away. So I don't see this as the right week to make Semenyo to Foden as a move. And then I probably, if I want to keep someone like Semenyo, will actually keep him long term, and then actually sell someone like Mbeumo to Foden on game week 17 instead, because I think, as I said, there are 2 slightly poor City fixtures that I don't love, like owning Foden 4, and I don't have coverage of that from a free hit, and Mbemo will just leave towards AFCON Gameweek 17. However, I think there is a consideration for maybe moving towards Foden next week, right? And that could still be through Mbemo, but it really depends. Like I just don't see it for me. Unless, let's say, I knew for sure that Mbemo was leaving for AFCON a little bit earlier in Gameweek 16, and I guess I needed a player anyways. It just doesn't really make too much sense for me, even though he's like kind of the flavor of the month pick right now. But there is angles around, as you said, Senesi is a transfer, and Dewsbury Hall probably stays in my team, to be honest. Semenyo could go as well, but I have to say, Everton at home still looks like a pretty good game after watching the Newcastle match. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with my team. I do really hope that Richards is available to play. I doubt I'll have enough information to know that Richards would be benched for a game like Burnley away, but that would obviously force a transfer for myself. Or maybe I just have to kind of suck it up and actually just play Anderson. Yeah, the only way I can really improve my team is going towards Arsenal, and we'll talk about that in a moment with my transfer plans. However, I think the key thing that I wanted to say is I don't see myself making too many moves in 16. I think that me moving towards more Newcastle players, like someone like if I was to do something like Mateta to Waltemad, is probably a little bit too short term in terms of thinking. Because whilst Thiago has a Tottenham game away, and obviously now that I'm saying this, I'm realizing obviously Tottenham away sounds like an amazing game, but I'm just simply not going to move Mateta, I guess, until maybe game week 15. But yeah. I think that's the most logical time to probably bin off someone like Mateta, and that should give me more than enough surplus funds to get all the players that I want in FPL, including Arsenal defenders, in preparation for Game Week 16. So I can get Timber now, or I can get Timber from a fixture perspective. I can probably get him like after Aston Villa away, because I think the weird thing with Arsenal is we talked about how they have like yo-yoing fixtures, and so it's interesting how like for Crystal Palace it works like that too, where like 16 is not a particularly good game. I don't think Fulham away is that poor. Burnley away is also quite good for them, but in terms of that sort of rotation between Arsenal and Crystal Palace, like 15 is a great week for me to invest back into, or sorry, 16 is a much better week for me to invest back into Urian Timber, or 14 if I really think that Urian Timber is going to start for Brentford. Whereas, yeah, that's kind of the dilemma that I have within my team. So let's quickly just maybe recap some of the fixtures that we've had in Game Week 13. I feel like it really hasn't updated my thoughts in terms of teams. I think Leeds have been pretty impressive so far. What I did like about this performance actually was that they showed that they were actually pretty feisty away from home as an attack. So I think that's something that they haven't really done so far. So I think that's a credit to them. Bournemouth put some fight in an away match. Once again, they kind of outscored their opponent on an XG basis, but then actually just conceded a lot of goals. Kind of reminiscent of the Aston Villa game, where I think like 4-0 was unfair to them. In this sense, I think 3-2 is a bit unfair to Bournemouth. But, they did give away a penalty, which obviously is their fault. And they just simply conceded 3 goals from, I think, what is like 1.xx of XG. So, not the best, but I guess, if you let people take shots, that's what's going to happen. The Newcastle match is interesting because obviously we just came from watching Everton play versus United. I'd be curious to see, actually, when I look at underlying stats, if Everton have been struggling away from home this season, obviously like it's hard to create narratives all the time, and I think it's hard to subscribe and believe that narratives are tangible. But there is an element, I suppose, of maybe their home performances haven't been that good this season. I feel like Everton have actually put in some pretty good away performances from time to time this season, or maybe I'm just overreacting to United, but it's also a good classic case of that one result doesn't suddenly mean that Everton is a fortress, right? And even with Newcastle, I think they've been struggling recently to score goals until, let's say, the recent City win. But then everything's kind of, blown apart. But part of it, too, is also set pieces. I think getting the right fullbacks in the team in terms of Hall and Livramento, that just dramatically changes this Newcastle side. And we all kind of knew that was to come because a lot of the poor results came when they're sort of playing Trippier and Burn. But they also have pretty good fixtures coming up, so that's definitely a team to look out for, I would say. With Sunderland, unfortunately, they just have poor fixtures. Same with Leeds, same with Burnley. So for Brentford, I still think it's waiting for like game week 15 or even 16, depending on how you personally rate Tottenham. With City, it's a bit of a yo-yo impact kind of effect as well. I think they kind of have like the alternative yo-yo to let's say Arsenal, where I think if I look at Haaland's fixtures, it's not so great this week, good the week after that, and then bad. Whereas with Arsenal, as you can see, and I think this is why I went for Saka so long ago, but bad this week, good the next, and then bad, and then they've got a great game in Gameweek 16 with Wolves at home. So the yo-yo structure kind of means that I think there are some pretty obvious captaincies. I didn't even touch on this, but I feel like captaincy this week for me is once again another discussion between Saka and Bruno. Like if I was going to do it 2 weeks ago versus Newcastle, and I know the result wasn't great in terms of the XG of Haaland being great versus Newcastle, I feel like I'm tempted again by a Saka captaincy or a Bruno captaincy. I do want to see how West Ham perform versus Liverpool, but as I said, their numbers under Nuno as a defense from an underlying perspective has been really poor. Nothing has really improved too much versus Potter. It's just the fact that the attack is somewhat alive. I think that makes a huge difference versus Potter's tenure. And so yeah, we'll see whether Bruno makes sense as an option for me or Saka makes sense as an option for me. But I can't really see myself captaining Haaland right now, which is maybe interesting for some managers to hear. But I do love a home game, and there are 2 home games for me to kind of choose from. And even Semenyo, I suppose, is somewhere within there, but we have this uncertainty around penalties. He's probably going to get another price drop in terms of Semenyo, but as I always say with the sort of list view on transfers, so when you click on the list button here, you kind of see how you own players from a price perspective. And I'm literally on the wrong list view, but I'm on the transfer page. When you click on list view, I do own Semenyo at I bought him at 7.4. So he can afford to drop one more time because I've already taken the price hit, right? When he dropped from 8.1 to 8.0 to now 7.9. So if he drops to 7.8, it's not really going to impact me. And I can still see myself playing Semenyo if I keep him this week. So it really just depends on, whether he's a sell this week or whether he's not based on my transfer plans. But I'm also not looking to sell someone that I think is still playing for a good offense, has reasonably good fixtures in terms of how the home and away games are split. And, I think the whole point of holding Semenyo is for a game like Burnley at home in Gameweek 17, which is not too far away now. So something to think about there, especially when a lot of players do go towards AFCON. And someone like Mbemo, for example, would have to go, I guess, before Semenyo if I don't choose to sell Semenyo in the short term. And then Dewsbury Hall, he's kind of gone from strength to strength for me. As I said, it feels weird, but it's like, he's almost improved my expectations as a player. Like he's getting games now where his underlying stats are sort of ticking up. The C-bit is still a little bit rogue. Like I think there are some weeks where his C-bit looks really, really positive and healthy, and he got 2 DEFCON games in a row, but then this game was a bit of a pullback in the Newcastle match. So I don't think DEFCON is something that you can really expect from Dewsbury Hall. Probably in more close affairs and less one-sided affairs, I think that's maybe the case. So we'll have to see just going forwards. But I'm pretty happy with my team in FPL. Very happy to get that sort of huge boost in terms of points. And I thank Foden, of course, for bringing back the elite goal scoring for one night. And hopefully he doesn't hurt me too much now that I won't own him in the short term. So let's see my transfer plans. So I think my transfer plans are actually quite simple. The way I see it is Senesi being banned means that he's a potential transfer this week. But because we have 5 free transfers on Gameweek 16, the reality is I either use most of my free transfers now on Gameweek 14 or I use most of my transfers in Gameweek 15, right? There's no 2 real ways about it. I think my team, as I said on paper in Gameweek 14, I think it can hold up to the scrutiny, I guess, of having Senesi banned, right? Richards, Lacroix, Virgil, all great. The only, odd one out, as I said, is Dewsbury Hall, who's now proving that he's worth his sauce. And maybe I'm the idiot who keeps benching him. So why not start this man for once in my life again so that he can just get 1 to 2 or 0 points for myself. But, we move on. In terms of transfers, though, as I said, if I want to make moves this week, I feel like on Gameweek 14, the way that I'll probably do this is probably going something like Senesi out to Timber. Because I feel like if I really do believe that Arsenal are going to play Timber and start him versus Brentford, I think I probably would need to have watched the Chelsea match, and maybe it has to go in a very similar way towards that Bayern match, because if let's say they're in a winning game state at 70 minutes, 75 minutes, then they choose to, let's say, play White, right, and sub on White, then I probably think Timber starts versus Brentford. However, if it's the flip side of that, I guess if it's like Timber plays 95 minutes of the match, they go, get a draw, for example, versus Chelsea, and it's been a very, very tough match, I kind of think White's most likely going to start the match. So going for some sort of gamble for Timber would probably be a little bit too risky for myself in a week where I'm already pretty thin on defenders. Although, of course, I'm taking out a suspended player. But I think the key thing is that the only move that I can really make away from someone like Semenyo is by going for someone like Minte, where this kind of forces me to be really tight on budget because I've got 0.0 here in the bank. And someone like Minte is not better than Semenyo in Gameweek 14. He's better than Semenyo in Gameweek 15, where he actually has West Ham at home. So I'm almost saying that the advantage here is Timber's much better than Dewsbury Hall, and the gulf between, let's say, Timber and Dewsbury Hall is less than the gulf between Semenyo and Minte, and therefore it's a good move because structurally I'm creating the best team that I can have, whereas maybe on Gameweek 15 I can't afford this set of moves in particular. What I don't like about that, though, as I said, is I think Dewsbury Hall is playable. I think Semenyo is better than Minte, as I said. And another piece to it is I think Mateta just has to go. So when I look at my team and remove, let's say, Senesi here, or keep him back for a week, I think in 2 weeks' time, when Mateta has, let's say, Fulham away, it's not a great game particularly. Thiago now gets to face Tottenham, who just look awful in Game Week 15. So why not just go Mateta to Thiago instead? And I feel like one of the moves that I can consider is, because if Senesi's back, I don't really need to transfer him out. I'll probably keep him for Burnley at home. I said that Palace's fixtures are actually getting a bit tough now. So maybe the move that I actually make is actually I go Lacroix out and I go for Timber. What concerns me once again with this piece is if I wait until Game Week 15, I suppose the nice thing is that you have a small midweek deadline here in Game Week 14, so maybe Thiago's not going to rise too much in price. I also kind of struggle to believe that too many people are going to give Thiago a price rise, or both Thiago and Timber a price rise before some of the fixtures that they have. Like, maybe Thiago doesn't get another price rise until after Arsenal. I would hope so, but he's done really well, so I think that's going to just naturally create some price inflation. And then I guess in Timber's case, if he does well versus Chelsea, I guess it's over for me. I don't really have the opportunity to shop Timber again. I'll probably miss out on this transfer plan, but maybe 0.1 in the bank is just about enough for me to get there. And this is the pair of moves that I'd be comfortable with on Game Week 15. Not to mention that I would also have an additional free transfer, right? So on Game Week 15, maybe all I need to do is just downgrade one other player. Like if it has to be someone like Virgil, who's, still performing absolutely awful. Leeds away doesn't look like a particularly good game for Virgil right now, so maybe I can sell him. Although I think that the concern is, 16's kind of decent for him as well. But maybe Virgil can go, and maybe instead of, let's say, Lacroix as well, I guess, the fallback plan to always getting Timber within my team is just going out of Virgil. So that's something I'm thinking about, basically. A Thiago move, I think, will happen in Game Week 15. And then, of course, I have a lot more money in the bank. Like, let's say I don't go Timber from Lacroix. Let's say I keep him. Maybe I actually just go Virgil to Timber. And that actually gives me enough money to maybe even upgrade someone like Semenyo as well to Foden on Game Week 15 if I really feel like that's the play. Because, of course, Game Week 15 Chelsea at home is not a particularly good game for Semenyo. So maybe I can give him Everton at home and then actually still consider selling someone like Semenyo in a week like this to Foden. And that's something that's on my mind right now, which I think it looks feasible that I can get there. There's a lot more, I guess, luxury within this move, but we'll see how things fall. Let me know what your thoughts in terms of transfer plans are. Are you guys being a bit more aggressive in Game Week 14 or 15? How does your chip strategy change after today's matches and things like that? That's going to be my transfer plans. Hopefully I'm able to roll. That's kind of what I'm prioritizing to do, but we'll see what happens with Premier League football. So take care, goodbye, and I'll see you guys soon.